Welcome everyone, I'm Rohit Vyas and you're watching a special edition of Face to Face. We're here on the East Coast, but this is an issue that affects all of you across North America. You've been reading about it recently, you've been hearing all kinds of rumors, and a lot of you have been calling us here at TV Asia about what to do about this issue. We're talking about an IRS amnesty program which ends on the 31st of August 2011, that's this year. What is the issue? Let me give you a brief background here and then introduce our guest who's going to try and solve some of these matters for you, or at least guide you as to what you're supposed to do. Recently, the U.S. Justice Department asked a federal district court in San Francisco to force HSBC USA, that's the bank, to disclose the names of their U.S. customers suspected of having bank accounts in India. Okay, it sounds very simple. You open up a non-resident Indian bank account, okay, but here is the IRS, the Justice Department, asking for permission to get those names. The legal action came after the indictment of a New Jersey Indian-American businessman accused of hiding his bank accounts in India from the Internal Revenue Service. I'm going to start off with that. We'll discuss this a bit in depth, but my guest is Paragpatel. He's a tax attorney. Parag, thanks for joining us on TV Asia. There's been a lot of concern because all of a sudden there was a conviction. There was somebody who was convicted of essentially hiding money from the IRS. There are lots of Indian Americans who may or who have or who think they have or who are not even sure that they have bank accounts in India. What does this all mean now? Let's start by tell us about the case to begin with, and let's take it from there as to what this all means for our community.
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me here today. It's a very important issue for the Indian American community. What happened is that this HSBC subpoena actually emanated out of two important cases which my office has been following for the last at least 5-6 months. There are two cases, one with the Indian American businessman that you've mentioned. Since that has been reported, he actually pled guilty about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And now he's being sentenced, and he's going to, unfortunately, go to jail and is subject to criminal penalties as well as civil penalties. There's another case that's with an Indian American woman in Long Island, very similar, had NRI accounts with HSBC, and as a result of her not reporting those accounts, she's also going to jail and faces stiff civil penalties as well.
Now, when you say not reporting the accounts, do you mean reporting the interest on the accounts, or the accounts itself have to be reported?
Both.
Both. Mm-hmm.
Both. The existence of the account and the income on the accounts have to be reported. Okay. So what happened in these two cases is that as the IRS was investigating these cases, the IRS discovered irregularities with the way HSBC's NRI representatives were essentially interacting with their customers. They saw some highly unusual irregularities, things such as allegedly assuring their customers that these accounts may not be reported, advising their customers to perhaps break up the deposits into smaller amounts below $10,000 to avoid the scrutiny of the U.S. government, have their bank statements sent to a foreign address instead of the U.S. address. So these are unlawful things if they were in fact if they happened. It's actually hard to believe because HSBC is one of the largest banks in the world, and it's clearly unusual, and that's why the IRS issued a subpoena last month to HSBC NRI division to provide the names of these customers. It's expected about 10,000 names will be handed over, and it is expected that HSBC will comply with that subpoena.
I think they already announced that they had no intention of not complying. They would comply, and they wanted to be within the law and all that. So I have a feeling you're right. But 10,000 names now, that could be all the Indian Americans from around the country right here in our part of the world, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, I just came back from a tax conference in Washington, D.C., where I inquired about what's going to happen to that list of names, and I was told that the list of names will be entered into a database with the IRS, and it'll lead to civil examinations, audits of those individuals, and perhaps, of course, there's criminal penalties. I mean, there are rules for reporting these accounts. Specifically, you have to report it on your federal income tax return.
And there is a schedule, which is in your federal tax. If the 1040 has schedule, what is it, B?
Correct.
Schedule B.
Schedule B, you have to report the income, and actually at the bottom of Schedule B, there is a question which asks you fairly simply, do you have an interest or a signatory power over a foreign account? And that's where you're supposed to start your disclosure. If the answer is yes, then you report the income, you report the existence of the account. And then also there's a separate form, which actually is not for